That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
I will say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. I am your host, Brian McFadden. We are now in Tuesday. Week 1 is officially in the books. The Giants beat the Titans. Joe Burrow threw for 4 interceptions. There was a tie, and the Seahawks are in first alone in the NFC West, exactly as we predicted. Will Tighe from Bettor Fantasy is my guest. Will, quick thoughts on Week 1.
Oh my gosh. I mean, football is back, man. It just the mayhem of the NFL is unmatched. You could have told me the results of week 1 would have been as such, and I would have never believed it. So it's just awesome to be back, man.
It's for a few reasons. Yes, we've been missing it. There's all the off-season storylines, but week 1 is always crazy because of the unpredictability, because there's new players, there's new coaches, there's new schemes. Coaches like Andy Reid have 4 months to prepare and will slaughter your defenseless Cardinals secondary as a result. But yes, week 1 is as good as it gets. The hope will never be as high. The hype will never be as high. Let's get into it. So this is going to be our fantasy episode during the season. As you guys know, we are doing this 5 days a week live now. Every Tuesday at 1 Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, we will have a different guest on, and we will try to keep it mainly fantasy focused. So who better for the first week of the season than Will Tighe from Bettor Fantasy? Are you ready to get this party started, Will?
Let's do it, man.
All right, so we're doing the format that we've been doing the offseason with the questions back and forth. You are the guest, so you have won the coin toss. Would you like to receive or ask the first question?
I would like to receive. Let's get the ball.
Love it. People really get that. Go for offense. This is an offensive league. 30 minutes of football with Legit Football starts now. So as I mentioned, we're going to make this a fantasy-centric episode. This is the first time we're doing this format. So I'm going to make it really easy for you. Who would you say, and you can give more than one answer, would the top waiver wire add this week based on what we saw in week 1?
Yeah, man, you could go a lot of different directions here. A lot's going to depend on the health of Najee Harris's knee, because Warren would be kind of the number 1 pick. I think Jeff Wilson's going to get a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. The guy that I'm thinking of targeting the most in terms of the bang for your buck you can get, right, without having to spend a ton of fab, is Donovan Peoples-Jones. This guy got a ton of targets for the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. He looked really good, hauling in a ton of contested catches. Jacoby Brissett was doing okay, keeping the offense in check, and he was targeting Peoples-Jones more than anybody else on that offense. So in terms of bang for your buck, I think I'm going to be targeting Peoples-Jones a ton.
I actually love that. I've been high on Peoples-Jones since he came out of Michigan. I just think it was a matter of finding opportunity. And I think this is the year. And of course, they have the quarterback situation. Brissett's not anybody's idea of a high-end quarterback, but we saw his usage really high. I think Cooper is more of a possession receiver at this point. He's a fantastic route runner. But if you're talking about ceiling, if you're talking about deep threat, if you're talking about big playability, Donovan Peoples-Jones is that guy right now for Cleveland, especially Kevin Stefanski loves to do play action. I can see a lot of deep shots. You could have certain weeks where Peoples-Jones really produces. Love that as an answer. I got a few guys. Jeff Wilson is an obvious one. Apparently, Najee Harris says he's playing. He literally was quoted today as saying, "I'm playing against the Patriots."
Yeah, we'll see.
I still think Warren should be on your radar as a pick because he had the Liz Frank thing in the preseason. He already got injured in week 1. I think Najee Harris is either going to have a reduced workload or he's going to miss some time. So I like Jalen Warren. Jeff Wilson with Eli Mitchell missing what could be 2 months, definitely. But I like a couple guys that are rookies, and there's all different rookies that get hype. Breece Hall got a lot of hype, but Michael Carter ended to get most of the shares. But how about Jahan Dotson, which we've been reading about, has been a favorite target of Wentz's all offseason. And what did he do? He just caught a couple touchdowns and looked fantastic making the play at the point of the catch. And Kyle Phillips in Tennessee. He was actually the lead. He had the most targets of all the receivers in Tennessee. It wasn't Robert Woods. And he was the one who made a spectacular catch to get Tennessee in field goal range at the end of the game. They ended up missing the kick. Those are my guys. if you're looking to add, if they're not on teams, those are the top waiver wire picks. Will, ball is now on my side of the field. Question from you.
Yeah, so it's CeeDee Lamb. What are you doing there? Is it a buy? Is it a holder? Is it a sell?
This is one of my questions. This later. My question is literally, how much are you fading CeeDee Lamb? So it's not like buy or sell. It's like, how much are you fading? I was not high on Lamb at his ADP. It was all about value to me. I think, I mean, you're the number one receiver in that Cowboys offense. I thought the Dallas would be playing from behind a lot. I had them missing the playoffs when I did my season predictions last week. So I was already fading him at his basically like second round, maybe high third round draft position. Now you don't have Dak. We've seen one game as CeeDee as the undisputed number one wide receiver. He had 2 catches, some bad drops. The offensive line looked awful. Granted, they're playing the Bucs, but still, all the things that we were fearing in the offseason were just so crystal clear in week 1 against Tampa Bay. And now they have Cooper Rush at quarterback. So I'm fading him hard. If you have some Dallas fans out there, I think there's some of them that are still going to be like, oh, Dak's coming back. And now it's like 4 to 6 weeks. It was 8 weeks. They might not put him on IR to keep him on the active roster. I think Jerry might a little crazy there. But I think you could probably get somebody to buy on him, especially a Cowboys fan. Are you aligned with me on this? What are your thoughts on CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, so quick little context here. So in my home league with Sean, one of our co-founders at Bettor Fantasy, I offered him Juju and Tom Brady for CeeDee Lamb. And I was thinking, man, I would be really happy.
Preseason or now?
Now.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and my thought was, Brian, like, hey, if I can get CeeDee in the door, I can sort of stash him on the bench for a few weeks. And then when Dak comes back, a nice little playoff piece potentially. But I took it off the table because Juju, I think, is just going to be so solid for these next the season, really, with Mahomes. And Tom Brady obviously is going to be a stud moving forward, we think. So I actually took it off the table. So I'm kind of holding on CeeDee for now, I think. But certainly a big inflection point for fantasy managers across fantasy leagues everywhere.
Completely agree with you taking that off the table. If I'm on the receiving end of that, I'm smashing that accept button.
Yeah.
I put Juju in a number of DFS lineups this week because I just felt like we didn't know outside of Kelsey who was going to get a lot of the targets. And it turns out everybody got targets. But Juju, I think, is at the end of the day is going to end up with more target share for the wide receivers than anyone else in that Kansas City team that's going to be scoring a lot. So I like Juju. And Brady, maybe he's finally going to decline a little, but he's going to have a very high floor. For CeeDee, I would have taken that all day. I like the idea of holding on Lamb because he's still going to be far and away the best pass-catching option in that offense unless maybe you throw Tony Pollard in there. There's just not a lot of other people to get opportunities, especially until Michael Gallup comes back. So, I mean, he got, I think, 9 or 10 targets. It's not like Dak wasn't throwing him the ball. It just didn't turn into anything. Maybe with a weaker defense, CeeDee can have some good weeks, so I like your idea to hold there. Speaking of buying low, do you have any candidates that you're buying low on right now based on how they produce, but you're still high on them after week 1?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at Kamara. He's a guy that we'll see with the rib injury that just popped up. I see Sahil saying Isaiah Pacheco there. I don't know if you can buy low on him anymore. He scored the touchdown.
60 yards and a touchdown in week 1. He made the CH looked good, but Pacheco probably not that low.
Yeah, so I would say Kamara just because I still believe in the talent. I think that offense is going to be firing pretty soon, and Kamara's just a guy that you can maybe get something for if somebody's kind of freaking out after the subpar week 1 and then the rib injury. Now we'll see how serious it is. If it's serious, obviously you might have to change your mind. But Kamara is somebody that I think I might be buying low on.
Yeah, I think what fascinated me about the Saints offense is they didn't really move the ball against what we thought would be one of the worst defenses in the NFL in Atlanta until the fourth quarter, and they actually moved to hurry up. So that could, especially in PPR leagues, benefit Kamara because if they're doing more of that hurry up offense, if that was how Jameis was able to move the ball, we saw Michael Thomas get involved. Jarvis Landry had a great week. Yes, Kamara is still Kamara. I think there are going to be opportunities for him there. I have a few people I want to throw out. The first one, Trey Lance. This is a fantasy discussion, not necessarily an NFL discussion. But simply the rushing production alone, you cannot judge what happens based on that horrible weather game that we just saw for a lot of these players. Another one of these guys, I'll mention the same game, Darnell Mooney, who ended up with 1 catch on 2 targets. So I still think he's going to be heavily targeted in this Chicago offense. They don't have a lot of other options. Dante Pettis scored a touchdown because it was a broken play and he just happened to be wide open. But I think you're going to see a guy like Darnell Mooney score a lot. I really liked, here's a couple guys who looked good, but maybe the stat sheet didn't fill up. Rashad Penny, I thought looked fantastic running the ball last night against Denver. I just think it was maybe game script. They passed more than I thought they would. I was a little surprised with Pete Carroll. And, they ended up winning that game, but I thought he looked great. A lot of broken tackles. And Adam Thielen, I just think that Kevin O'Connell offense, they looked unstoppable against a top 5 defense in Green Bay. Yes, Jefferson is the one who stuffed that stat sheet, but Cook looked good. I think Thielen's going to have lots of opportunities. I'm just really up on this offense in general.
Love it. Yeah, one quick note on Jefferson. I saw a really great stat on Twitter from, I think, Brian McFarland. Justin Jefferson ran 24% of his routes against linebackers or safeties last year. On Sunday's game, it was 60%.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that offense start to utilize him a little bit more strategically with Kevin O'Connell. And I think, not breaking any news here, but Jefferson's obviously a guy you can keep believing in.
He's pretty good. He is pretty good. And if he's going up against linebackers and safeties, that's money in the bank. Quick shout out to Kaida Luna. Jimmy G week 4. We're already got these predictions. It was one game in a monsoon. Let's give a little bit more. They're playing the Seahawks this week. I think that'll be a better idea of just if Trey Lance is going to be their long-term future. Next question coming from you, Will.
Yeah, are you hitting the panic button on the Patriots offense? We liked Ramondre Stevenson's talent coming into the year. We like Damian Harris a little bit. Hunter Henry might be a viable tight end option, but that offense looked putrid against the Dolphins. So are you hitting the panic button on them?
I hit the panic button in the offseason, in training camp, and then I blared the panic button during the preseason. And now it's just like the panic button I've smashed so many times, it's gone at this point. There's a few reasons. This is not a knock on Mac Jones, but I have been screaming since McDaniels took that job in Las Vegas, and the idea to replace him was to bring in 2 defensive-minded failed head coaches in Joe Judge and Matt Patricia. And on top of that, we started seeing reports that they were installing an entirely different offense, an entirely different blocking scheme, and it was just going miserably. By all accounts, joint practices, preseason games, and the Dolphins have a very good defense. They brought back almost their entire roster from last year on the defensive side of the ball, and even though they got a new head coach, they kept Josh Byer as their defensive play caller. But still, that Patriots offense looked bad. I mean, you could have said maybe Devontae Parker's going to have some opportunities. He didn't. The offensive line didn't look good. There was a lot of pressure on Jones. Obviously, that strip sack that led to the early score by Melvin Ingram. I don't want a piece of this offense at all. If I had to, Jacoby Myers looked good from a PPR perspective, from a floor perspective, but I don't think there's much of a ceiling there. So like maybe a bench stash, like kind of a bye week play, but I'm off Mac Jones. Stevenson, maybe if there's someone in that backfield, but in general, I'm staying completely away from this Patriots offense. How about you?
Yeah, I think that offense is stuck, man. I think we stay away for sure.
Okay, that's simple. No additional context required. All right, we talked about buying low. Let's talk about selling high. What are some players that produced in week 1, maybe a little bit of surprise, that you think somebody will overreact and trade more than they're worth? Do you have anybody in mind?
Okay, this is off the cuff. I just thought of this. This might be crazy. This might be blasphemy.
This whole show is off the cuff. That's the point.
Yeah.
So let's hear it.
Oh, God, I might regret this in like 2 minutes. Cooper Kupp.
Oh, wow. Didn't see that coming.
Not because I think he's a bad player. He's obviously an elite wide receiver. He got peppered with targets. I think he had like 15 targets last week or on Thursday night. So, but you're not going to be able to sell him for any more than you can now. And I just think the way that offense looked last Thursday, that offensive line is in rough shape, man. And I know the Bills have a good front four and some good linebackers, but I'm worried about the Rams. And so if you can kind of get off Cooper Kupp while he's still at peak value, he's not gonna get any higher for you. So if you can go and get a solid running back and then a wide receiver in return, maybe, I think that's something to think about.
Couple points I'll agree with you. One, I would disagree. Completely agree about that offensive line. That is going to be a liability. That was the one question mark. We did our preview for Thursday night last week. I predicted the Rams to win, but I said if there was one factor that was going to be bigger than people are anticipating, it's the new Rams offensive line without Andrew Whitworth versus that Bills pass rush, and we saw that manifest. But the one thing, even with the bad offensive line, was Stafford was targeting the crap out of Cooper Kupp. So if there's one thing where I'm not quite ready, once again, if you can get a great bounty for him, go for it. But I just think when Stafford's panicking, he's just looking Kupp's way. That could benefit purely from a volume perspective, and we all know how talented he is. So quickly, Takaido Luna mentioned DeAndre Swift as a sell high. Quick thoughts on that, and then Carter Anderson has a question about Cam Akers.
Yeah, so I think Swift. I'm probably holding just because the running back position is so hard to get a guy figured out there. He looked awesome.
He looked great.
I think the Lions are going to want to run the crap out of the ball. I would still probably hold on to Swift. You could definitely get a haul for him right now, though. If it all depends on what you're getting in return, obviously. But I'm probably holding on DeAndre Swift for now.
Same. And the running back position is so top heavy. You really don't want to get rid of what they call the hero running back unless you're just getting a gigantic haul, which maybe you could after week 1. But he's heavily involved in the passing game. He is splitting reps with Jamal Williams, but Jamal Williams was a little bit more of the goal line back, which is the short distance. But from the passing game, it was definitely Swift. And when Swift got opportunities against a very good Eagles front seven, he looked fantastic. Quickly, Carter Anderson asks, should I sell Cam Akers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yes, 100%.
Yeah, and I think if he's a guy that you want to seek out, I think you avoid that. That the touches speak volumes, and not good volume for Cam Akers. I mean, he only had
Darrell Henderson got 18.
Yeah, Akers only had a handful of touches. He only played a handful of snaps.
Yeah,
and this was a guy that had the whole offseason to get healthy from that Achilles injury. There's clearly something going on there. I think a lot of people saw the clip of him in pass protection, avoiding.
Olay.
Yeah, I mean, like that's how you don't get on the field. And so I think Cam Akers is a guy that I'm not going for. And if you can get something in return for him, that's decent value. I think you jump on that opportunity.
Yeah, completely agree, Carter. I think the name recognition alone, you should be able to get something. And the fact that at best it's a 50-50 with Henderson, but we kind of saw the worst case on Thursday night, and that was Henderson actually got a large majority of the touches in the rushing game and the passing game. Sell Cam Akers. We're right at halftime. I've got a few sell candidates I'll mention after starting in the second half. Anthony, producer, timer's still going. Gotta love it. Technical difficulties. All right, so guys, today our podcast is brought to you by IDP Guys. IDP Guys is the #1 site for defensive fantasy football, or IDP. They cater to dynasty and redraft, and guess what? They have offense as well. IDP Guys features daily articles, super deep rankings, plus an awesome Discord with a vibrant community. IDP Guys has everything you need to win your fantasy trophy for as little as $9.99 a month. Just go to idpguys.org. idpguys.org. Check them out. Will, tell everybody about Bettor Fantasy.
Yeah, so real quick, definitely recommend IDP Guys. We met them at the Fantasy Football Expo. They're great dudes. They know their stuff. IDP Guys is an awesome site. So Bettor Fantasy, this is our logo right here. We let you bet on your fantasy leagues matchups, win some coins, and then cash out for prizes in the shop. And then we also launched our DFS feature. So if you're in one of the 21 states that we're now live in, you can enter player prop contests for cash and win cash back. So we're pretty pumped about that one.
Yeah, I have the Bettor Fantasy app myself. I would be playing it even if it was not a partner of ours. Just the fact that I can bet against my league mates. I'm getting my dynasty guys in there. We talk trash all year long. Now we get to bet against each other. I made picks in week 1 about who would win different matchups. I picked on myself. I won. It was a great start. So make sure to check out Bettor Fantasy. All right, we have been hydrated. Game plans have been adjusted. We're going into the second half. Will, are you ready to go here?
Ready.
Awesome. So we're going to start the second half. I'm going to kind of tie on to, I have a few answers for sells that because we had some questions I didn't get to, and I want to make sure you guys hear who I think is going to be sells, and Will, feel free to chime in. Devin Duvernay. So there's a lot of questions around, who's going to be the third guy? Isaiah Likely is the next hot guy in Baltimore, behind Rashad Bateman, behind Mark Andrews. Duvernay caught 2 touchdowns, and he looked great doing them, but his route running and his usage was actually much lower. Route running is in like his route, the percentage of routes that he ran versus some of the other targets. So I don't think this is something you're going to see every week, but anytime a guy comes out and there's speculation around who's going to be the guy in that particular offense, and one guy that kind of comes out of nowhere, usually you can sell high for him. So Devin Duvernay is a guy, if you even have him on your roster. I mean, a lot of people probably don't. Carson Wentz was actually one of the top scoring quarterbacks, but at the end, they were playing Jacksonville. it's the full Carson Wentz experience because he also threw 2 interceptions that let Jacksonville come back and take the lead before they ended up scoring the game-winning touchdowns. And probably one, this is on almost everybody's roster. How about James Conner? Conner was very, very touchdown dependent last year, scoring 18 touchdowns, and he went 10 rushes for 26 yards, but he did get in the end zone, so his final stat line for fantasy looked decent, but I'm just not high. I actually thought Eno Benjamin looked better when they did put him in the game, so I think he's going to get more opportunities. Kingsbury said a lot of good things about Benjamin in the offseason. Do you agree with me with James Conner?
Yeah, I do and I don't. I think James Conner is going to be somebody that you can plug in as a weekly RB2 as long as he stays healthy. But if you do decide to keep James Conner on your team, I think you should definitely pick up Eno Benjamin. He was one of the guys that I was thinking about mentioning in the waiver wire section. He looks good, man. And you know, he's a good pass catcher, as is James Conner, but we know Conner has trouble staying healthy throughout the entire season. So I wouldn't blame anybody for selling high on James Conner after a good week 1, but I think just given the scarcity at the position, I think I would probably hold on him.
Yeah, but at least pick up Benjamin because Conner has literally never played every single game, even with Pittsburgh. Even last year in Arizona, he missed a couple games. Quick question before we'll get to your next question. This could end up turning into like an audience question episode, and that's fine because that's what you guys want for fantasy. Carter Anderson asks, sell Saquon Barkley, or can Giants keep it together? Barkley finished as the #1 rusher as far as yardage after week 1. Your thoughts there, Will?
I'm holding on to Barkley, man. And if somebody wants to try and sell high on him, I'm taking all I can get. I think Barkley looked different. He looked back like his normal self. He looked explosive. He looked angry when he was running. He wanted to run people over. He looked awesome. I think the Giants offensive line got it together in the second half of that game. Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas looking really good. I've got faith in Barkley. I've got faith in the Giants too now with Brian Dable.
Look at that. I said we did a week 1 recap yesterday with Pro Football Demon, and when a team plays the way they did in the second half, that's coaching. That is coaching. Nobody is going to mistake the Giants for having a more talented roster than the Titans. But the Giants just played to win, not just in the coaching decisions, but just the way those guys came out. Barkley's a great example. I'm with you, Will. Do not sell Barkley unless you can get an absolute King's bounty. I'll keep bringing on these questions. So Anthony Lai asks, trade Mike Williams. So Keenan Allen hurt his hamstring. Initial reports is that it's not as serious as it could be, but it looks like he's at least going to miss this week against the Chiefs. Are you trading Mike Williams, Will?
Yeah, and I already did, Brian. I traded him away in Dynasty. I traded him before week 1. I was able to keep him in my auction league. I kept him for $1, not to brag, but I got rid of him. I just, man, the big week's coming, you know. But when the floor is 2 points, that's really tough. That's really tough, man. And when you can get guys at the wide receiver position that are going to give you weekly production, I would probably trade away Mike Williams. It's going to be tough now after that week, but if you can get something decent in return for Mike Williams, I think you should try and do that.
Because Keenan's out, this is probably a decent week to kind of sell that. Like, hey, Mike Williams is going to be wide receiver 1. Chiefs are going to score a lot of points. But, man, Herbert was spreading the ball around. So I just think Herbert's not going to lock in any guy. I'm with you. Trade Mike Williams. Just over 10 minutes left. We went like 5 minutes in the second half, but it's your turn to ask the next question, Will.
Yeah, so I want to get a temperature check on the Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery split. So week 1, we saw David Montgomery with his least, the least amount of percentage of carries that he had in over 2 years. And so Khalil Herbert got both of the goal line looks. He punched one in. He looks better, frankly, to me on film. I think he's the better player. What's your thoughts on David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, that split?
So a lot of the news that comes out in the training camp is split when it comes to coaches with they're going to tell you something and it ends up being complete BS. And then sometimes they tell you something and it's exactly what happens. We heard from the Bears coaches that they wanted a close to a 50-50 split between Montgomery and Herbert. And I think a lot of us, in the media and people who cover fantasy are like, is that really going to happen? We kind of saw it manifest in a game that was run heavy because of the weather. And as you mentioned, goal line opportunities. And I personally, from a pure physical talent perspective, I like Herbert a little bit better than Montgomery. I've never been that high on Montgomery. I know he's had good fantasy seasons. I've never really had a piece of him because I always kind of didn't really buy the hype. I more buy the hype on Herbert, and he's a guy that's probably not rostered very much. So if I'm, as far as value, even now, you probably could get him for really cheap fob. I just don't imagine, even with what we saw week 1, unless you're really tied into this, that you're really going to spend. So I like Herbert in that backfield over Montgomery. I think at the very least we're going to see a split. I think Eberflus said that's what they're going to do, and the fact that they showed it in week 1 means that it was entirely his intention there. And your quick thoughts before we go to the next question.
Yeah, I'm a big Khalil Herbert guy. I think he's a really good player. I don't think David Montgomery is anything special, and the allure with Montgomery these past couple of years has been the volume. And so if that's not there this year, then what are we doing? So I think Khalil Herbert's somebody that I'm probably trying to get on my teams right now, and then David Montgomery might be somebody that I'm trying to trade away.
Here's another way to look at it. This is a brand new coaching staff. Yes, they've seen players from afar and tape, but this is their first time evaluating these people in person. So they get into camp and OTAs and training camp in the preseason, and they say, we like this Herbert guy at least as much, if not more, than this guy who's been our lead back for the past few seasons. I agree. A lot of it has been volume-based. I like Herbert. Get on the Herbert train there in Chicago. All right, quickly, 8 minutes left. Do you have a defensive/special teams that you want to stream this week? I don't know if that's some leagues we don't do defenses anymore, Superflex. I get that. I am in both, but I do have some leagues where we play defenses. Do you have a defense or two that you like for week 2?
Yeah, and I think even though their best player just got injured probably for the year, unfortunately, I think it's the Steelers. We'll see if they can. I mean, I don't know if they're a streamer.
Quick note on Watt. Apparently, he is not going to be done for the year. He got a second opinion, and they said it could be like 4 to 5 weeks. And they're just going to rehab it with no surgery. To be determined if that's the right approach, but continue.
Yeah, always get that second opinion. Yeah, I mean the Steelers. They're facing the Patriots, and so that's pretty much all you need to know. They have an incredible secondary. The Patriots are going to get nothing through the air. That's going to be a very low scoring output from the Patriots on offense. I think the Steelers are a slam dunk streamer if they're a streamer available option for you.
Yeah, completely agree. They're one of the 3 that I listed here for a few reasons. The Steelers' defense looked great. Alex Highsmith got 3 sacks. Even if TJ Watt he's going to miss time, but even if he's gone for the whole season, they have a lot of other talented players. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a star in the secondary. They just forced 4 turnovers from the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. Now they get to play the Patriots offense we just talked about. A couple other options. I do think the Rams bounce back. They get the Falcons, who looked better, but still didn't look like a lights-out offense. So I think the Rams bounce back against the Falcons. And Cincinnati against the Dallas Cowboys. Just because you've got Cooper Rush. We talked about the problems on the offensive line and the weapons, so there's another streaming team. The Steelers might be on a lot of rosters now, but I don't think the Bengals are, so keep in mind DST. All right, question from you.
Yeah, so the Bengals. I mean, the offensive line did not look good again. Joe Burrow obviously had some troubles in the first half there, throwing some picks. How do you feel about the Bengals moving forward with their weapons? We'll see what happens with T. Higgins with his unfortunate concussion. Jamar Chase looked awesome. Joe Mixon looked awesome. But, do you think they'll be able to keep those point projections or those point totals going throughout the whole year with the offensive line issues?
So I have a question coming up that is which O-line surprised you the most? And one of my answers is the Bengals arrow down. And that is my biggest concern with this offense that was the reason they lost the Super Bowl. At the end of the day, Aaron Donald got that pressure. The offensive line was, even during the playoffs, could not keep Burrow upright. They still produced from a fantasy perspective, so I'm not really fading that offense. If anything, they're going to be playing from behind more because of some of the issues they have. And from a fantasy perspective, especially in the passing game, probably go up. Maybe Jamar Chase's value went up even more if that's possible, because you just see that his floor is crazy high, his ceiling is crazy high. Same with Burrow. He's not going to throw 4 picks every week. It could be an issue in the run game, so maybe Mixon gets knocked down slightly. But otherwise, no, I'm not doing much with that in the fantasy realm. But in the NFL realm, that was my biggest question. Everybody's like, oh, they improved their offensive line. Okay, but we haven't seen this offensive line play together. On paper, it's better. And yes, we just talked about Pittsburgh's pass rush and how good they looked, but part of that was, man, this offensive line for Cincinnati looked bad, especially on the interior. Just couldn't give Burrow any time. The fact that he was, just under pressure so much is probably what led to a lot of those turnovers. So I'm going to pivot this into an offensive line discussion for a few reasons. I am wearing, I don't know if you can see in the camera, my All 22 shirt. That's another partner that I'm sure, Will, you spoke to at the Fantasy Football Expo. And I'm going to try, I didn't even tell the All 22 guys I'm doing this. I'm going to have an All 22 non-skill player of the week. And this week, a little bit of a homer pick, but Connor Williams from my Miami Dolphins, the reason I'm picking him, he had a PFF grade of 82.3, which led all centers. This guy was a guard last year in Dallas, led all centers, really helped solidify that Dolphins offensive line. They are actually one of my O-line up. The way they gave Tua time to throw, and they ended up scoring 20 points. They didn't go lights out, but a big improvement over last year. And then finally, before I give this, do you have an offensive line that surprised you other than Cincinnati, up or down?
Yeah, I think it's the Giants, and not to go back to it, but how quickly they clicked, right? We loved the Evan Neal pickup in the draft and some of the things that they did in free agency, but I was surprised at how quickly they looked like they were able to gel and mesh together. So that's an O-line that I'm definitely trending up on.
Yeah, and the last one I'll mention, and this was until the fourth quarter maybe, the Seahawks offensive line starting 2 rookies. And they were holding that Broncos pass rush at bay until the fourth quarter, and then Bradley Chubb was really kind of taking it to Charles Cross. But prior to that, I was mentioning on Twitter that this offensive line looks better than the Broncos offensive line. Quickly, Takaido Luna mentioned I just dropped the Cincinnati D. His other comment says he has the Bills D, but with facing that Dallas Cowboys with Cooper Rush, the offense looked bad with Dak. How's it going to look with Cooper Rush? I'm liking the Bengals D there. All right, next question from you, Will. We got just under 3 minutes left.
My cat's making an appearance.
Oh, the question could come from the cat. Oh, it was a black cat, too. You can't bring a black cat on a fantasy episode. That just negates all the advice that we're giving. We've now put bad luck into the proceedings. Will, your next question.
Yeah, Davante Adams. How do you feel about him? I mean, obviously 17 targets. That's a crazy amount. Do you think that they're going to be able to sustain that moving forward with him? Is he somebody that you're still high on for the rest of the year?
Fantasy, yes. Absolutely. I think the biggest question was, is he going to get the same kind of volume that he got in Green Bay? And the answer is a resounding yes. Too much of a yes from an NFL perspective. I think if Derek Carr's plan is to target Davante Adams 15 to 20 times each week, they're going to run into problems just like they did against the Chargers because they have other great weapons. You have to spread the ball around. If the defense knows who you're going to, they don't have to double team Darren Waller. They don't have to worry about the great route running of Hunter Renfrow. They can just target on Adams. So from a fantasy perspective, though, I think we've shown that Adams wanted to come play in Vegas with his former college teammate. Carr wanted him there, and he quickly did everything he could to just pepper and feed the ball to Davante Adams. So fantasy perspective, 100%. My one question was, is he going to get the same volume he does? He produced. He had over 100 yards and a touchdown. Definitely hold there or sell incredibly high. But from an NFL perspective, that worries me. All right, just over a minute left, let's go high level. Bird's eye view. What's your biggest takeaway in fantasy in general from a league perspective with what we saw on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it's the lack of running backs that you can feel good about. There's only a handful of guys that we think are going to be able to produce on a week-to-week basis. And if you can get some of those guys on your team, I think if you have to maybe even overpay a little bit to get somebody like a Saquon Barkley, to get somebody like a DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor, obviously, I think you just got to do it. Those positions are going to be so hard to fill as the season goes along, as injuries happen. Like even a guy like Kareem Hunt, if you can get Kareem Hunt on your team for maybe, obviously something less than those guys, I think that's a savvy play.
2 touchdowns. Yeah, he looked great. That whole Browns running game looked great. Agree with you there. I think the dearth of, and so many timeshares in the running back room, even, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon clearly still involved, Jamal Williams even involved with Detroit. My big takeaway with just over 10 seconds left is the elite wide receivers are still elite regardless of which team they're on. A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, didn't matter what uniform they were wearing, they produced. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, they produced. The best wide receivers are still the best for a reason. All right, that is it. The gong has sounded. The game is up. First week 2 preview fantasy game in the books. Will, post-game press conference, how'd your team do?
I felt good about it. I mean, I love the quick answers. I love the feedback that we got from the chat. It was nice having those questions come in, and yeah, just really excited to see how the season progresses. Week 1 is not going to tell the whole story, but this is something that Sigmund Bloom over at Football Guy said. The sooner that you can drop your preconceived notions from the preseason and start to build your opinions based around what we're seeing on the field this year, the better off we're going to be as fantasy managers. So I'm definitely excited to see how weeks 2 and 3 unfold, and then we can start to have a really good idea of what this year is going to look like.
Yeah, I love that particular point in that we all have our preconceived notions of how things are going to turn out. Sometimes they're backed up instantly, and sometimes they're not. Now, how quickly do you pivot? With one caveat is that week 1 is crazy, and week 1 usually doesn't reflect the rest of the season, which is why I like that you said week 2, week 3. By then, we'll have a very good set of data points to say, okay, oh, this really is happening. Saquon really is back, right? A.J. Brown really is going to be dominating, even the fact that he's on a Philadelphia run-first offense. Thank you guys so much. We're going to do these. We'll do these questions. Didn't know if we get a lot of questions from the audience, but we will put those in, especially on this episode because it is fantasy centric. Come with your buy sell questions. Come with your start sit questions. We'll definitely have Will on again. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday for fantasy. Make sure to check out Bettor Fantasy. That's Bettor Fantasy. You can download the app. They are out on Android and iPhone now. I know because I'm an Android user and I got on. Check out Legit Football. Go to legitfootball.com. As always, guys, free 5 days a week, NFL news in 5 minutes or less. Thanks for listening or watching. This has been 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. We'll see you Thursday.
Peace.
That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner.